Former SEC Chairman says Bitcoin Spot ETF is inevitable. Thorswap pauses trading. RFK is against CBDCs. And the witness in the SBF trial says he committed wire fraud alongside SBF. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto Daily. So got a couple of things today. A little bit of news about the SBF trial, like you heard. Bitcoin is still hovering around 27,500. I'll refresh this, but we haven't really been moving much. Kind of just hovering in that mid 27K range. Just kind of waiting for something to happen here. So first piece of news, the former SEC Chairman, Jay Clayton, said, let's see that technology in our financial system. We've decided every legal question around Bitcoin, and that would make you think an ETF is inevitable. So essentially, in this, 3-minute clip, he talks about how, all the legal questions around Bitcoin have been answered. He was asked, what's changed since he was chairman, because obviously he was, not necessarily anti-Bitcoin, but the general stance was anti-Bitcoin. And he said that, all the legal questions have been answered. The bad actors are now out of the system. He was asked if that means SBF, obviously because of the trial going on right now. And he kind of dodged the question about SBF specifically. But, I generally think that this is right, that, we've answered all the legal questions. There's been the battles back and forth, especially with Coinbase and the SEC. And really at this point, there's nothing holding it back. Basically just the SEC buying time until, they're kind of forced to approve it. So next thing, so Thorswap, and obviously you know that I'm a big follower of Thorchain. Thorswap is one of the interfaces of Thorchain, and they recently just paused the platform as of this morning. So Thorswap Exchange said on Friday it would shift into maintenance mode after a series of illicitly linked funds were passed through the platform in the past several days. Thorswap runs on Thorchain, a network that allows users to freely trade tokens between different blockchains. So, like I said, Thorswap is simply an interface for Thorchain. You could think of it as like, one app on the internet, for example. So, if one app on the internet shuts down, it doesn't mean the internet shuts down. So Rune is down like 11% today. I think there are, a lot of people, and just the general negative sentiment of it, dumping Rune, thinking that, Thorswap is Thorchain. Obviously, it's the biggest interface for Thorchain, but definitely not the entirety of Thorchain itself. So kind of a negative thing, I think, in terms of Thorswap and, shutting down for this reason. Everyone's got to do what they got to do. But, I personally, and I wrote an article actually about this yesterday, think that, as a decentralized exchange, their position should be anybody can trade. And if there is a malicious actor to stop, that might be at the blockchain level. It might be at, obviously trying to prevent it from happening in the first place, or at a government level, trying to seize those funds before they make it to an exchange. I don't know that it's a decentralized exchange's responsibility. Obviously, Thorswap is not a decentralized exchange. It's just an interface to it. So, this hacker could simply go to another Thorchain interface and start transacting. But if we start to see more Thorchain interfaces shut down, that'll be something to keep our eyes open towards. So, Lloyd Blankfein, I think I got that right, was the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And he basically, in this interview, kind of said a whole lot of nothing, but still thought it was interesting to throw in here. He basically said he isn't convinced about Bitcoin, but he is open to it. He also said he wasn't convinced about some earlier things like, phones and the internet. But then obviously over time realized that it did have a place in the market. So he also said at the end of the interview that he owns zero crypto. So like I said, whole lot of nothing, but basically said he's open to Bitcoin, but doesn't hold any, but also doesn't think it's going to succeed. So kind of interesting to see, that kind of like banker mindset of like, yeah, I'm aware that it could be a thing, but I don't think it's going to be a thing. And it currently isn't a thing that I'm worried about right now. So that's kind of his take, but just kind of an interesting thing I thought I'd throw in there. Very different take is from presidential candidate RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he's been pro Bitcoin. We've seen him in other places talk about Bitcoin and how he believes that it's a positive thing for the world. In this interview, he talks about CBDCs and how he is very anti-CBDC and thinks that it's a platform for control. He said, I think they will become an instrument of power and control. So, he's pro Bitcoin, anti CBDC. I think that's exactly what we want to see. So definitely cool to see someone who's very much in the, traditional market and political spectrum, talking about pro Bitcoin and anti CBDC. So the World Economic Forum did this video where they kind of interviewed this founder about their Bitcoin mining operation, which basically uses wasted energy to mine Bitcoin. So it uses energy that's blown off from other sources, especially like natural gas type of energy. So it's actually positive for the environment, since that energy is just getting blown out in the environment. Instead, it could be recycled essentially and used to mine Bitcoin. So I think that's a really cool business model. I obviously haven't taken the time to dive into it, but from this video, it looks interesting, and it looks like they're trying to, mine Bitcoin in a sustainable way, and also allow other data centers to be a little bit more sustainable. So kind of sharing their practices. Ledger just cut 12% of its staff. Obviously, we've seen this happen not just in crypto, but in the entire tech ecosystem. All these big tech companies have been cutting staff like crazy. They cited macroeconomic headwinds are limiting our ability to generate revenue. In response to the current market conditions and business realities, we must reduce roles across the global business. So obviously, like I said, across the whole tech spectrum, you're seeing people cut. You're seeing companies cut people, from the payroll. So Ledger's a relatively small company, so they've got 734 employees, so they cut about 88 jobs. They also just announced that they raised another $109 million out of their $1.4 billion valuation. So, I don't think Ledger's like a super profitable business. Just my take. I obviously haven't looked into the numbers. But I'm not really concerned about this. I think this obviously could look negative for the crypto industry, but in my opinion, anyone who understands what's going on in tech right now knows what's happening. I feel like Elon Musk was kind of the catalyst to give companies the headway to say, okay, now we're just going to cut staff. So that's what we're going to keep seeing, in my opinion, for the time being. So obviously, like I said, the past couple of days, we're following this SBF trial, and there was a fourth witness called, and he basically talked about, he alongside like three other top executives at FTX and Alameda Research actually pled guilty to the charges. So SBF is pleading not guilty, in case you missed that part. But this guy said he committed wire fraud, securities fraud, and commodities fraud alongside Bankman-Fried and Caroline Ellison, who ran Bankman-Fried's Alameda Research hedge fund, and former FTX executive Nishad Singh. So Wang is the fourth witness. Ellison and Singh all pleaded guilty to charges shortly after Bankman-Fried was arrested. So SBF is like the only one who's claiming that he didn't do any wrongdoing and that it was all his executives. Basically, he's just pushing the blame onto them. But we've seen a lot of really interesting kind of information come out about this trial, and that's the stuff we've been talking about in the previous videos. But Wang said, we gave special privileges to Alameda Research to allow it to withdraw unlimited funds from FTX, and lied about it. So as the days roll on, we're just going to keep seeing more and more interesting news about SBF. But a lot of these pieces of news have really showed us how much of a scam FTX was from the beginning. Like it was, and I covered this yesterday if you want to go back, but literally since day one, it was basically a scam. And it's just crazy how long he got away with it for. And I think the crazier part is how in the limelight and how, like pro attention he was, yet all this shady shit was happening in the background. So just kind of crazy, but something to keep our eyes on. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of news about it as the days roll on, like I said, so I'll be covering it every day. But that's all I got for today. So enjoy the weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday.